I was an art major who then went to law school, practiced law for 15 years, didn't like it, got into medical research. And now that's quite a change from law or art. But I was a primary investigator on a National Cancer Institute funded study. When I got into my 50s, all of a sudden osteoporosis became really a big topic. And most of my friends and I were going through menopause then. And I had the opportunity to purchase a DEXA scanning machine and to become a radiology technician in the state of Washington. And I started a business that did osteoporosis screening and counseling. Now, my focus has always been functional medicine rather than the straight allopathic medicine. So a lot of what I was counseling was different from what was being told to women and men back in the 90s. I had a fixed talk that I did regularly. We counseled each person we screened personally for 10 minutes. And we got a lot of feedback that said, I learned more from you in 10 minutes than I've learned from any of my medical providers my whole life, which was very gratifying. The other gratifying thing we did was to get hundreds, maybe thousands of women off synthetic hormone replacement, which didn't help bones. And I had read the minor studies, the smaller studies, and knew that there were some really big questions, which the larger study finally said, yeah, this is bad news. So that's my background. Now, first of all, what is osteoporosis? Well, we think of osteoporosis as thinning bones. That's not really what it is. Osteoporosis as a big health issue didn't exist until 1992 and 94, when the WHO, World Health Organization, defined osteoporosis in terms of the DEXA scan and standard deviations off the, quote, norm. Okay, what was the norm? The norm was a group of 30-year-old healthy Caucasian women. Why a 90-year-old or 80-year-old or 65-year-old black woman, for instance, or Asian woman, Caucasian woman should have their bones compared to a 30-year-old's bones makes no sense. That's a T-score. That's the number you get when you have a DEXA scan. Osteoporosis was defined rather arbitrarily as minus 2.5 standard deviations off this totally arbitrary norm. Osteopenia, which is now considered a disease, wasn't even supposed to be a disease. It was just a category of people whose bone density was a little lower than normal, whatever normal was. And now osteopenia and osteoporosis are considered medical conditions requiring medical intervention. And the redefinition of osteoporosis, which before 1992 and 94 was considered a rare disease, mostly of very frail, very elderly. The new definition resulted in millions of otherwise healthy women and men being classified with a medical condition that required medical intervention, doctors' visits, screenings, high doses of calcium. Now, that's what osteoporosis is. It's an artificially defined, really non-disease. And I didn't know that until I did my research this year. Some of the osteoporosis myths. First of all, the T-scores, the number you get when you have a DEXA scan, predicts your fracture risk. I'll talk later about how that is not accurate. Second, calcium builds strong bones. Not true. Third, prescription drugs are necessary for increasing bone density. Absolutely not true. That dairy is good for bones? Not true. That bone density loss with age is unnatural and unhealthy? Not true. And that there's an epidemic of osteoporosis in the world now. Well, like I said, there is, because they've defined osteoporosis so narrowly and are comparing everybody to 30-year-old Caucasian women. So now we do have an epidemic, but it's an epidemic caused by definition, not by actual problems in the real world. Another myth is that most fractures are caused by osteoporosis. Not true. We'll go back and I'll go over why each of those is a myth and not reality. But let's look at bone physiology. Bones, like every organ in our body, are living tissue. They're replaced constantly. They're turned over. We have a whole new skeleton every 10 years. The way this works, we have cells that build bone, and we have cells that take away old, brittle bone. Osteoblasts build, osteoclasts eat away the old bone. And that way, our bones keep turning over. That's very healthy. The faster that happens, the healthier our bones are. And it slows down a bit as we get older. Bone, like our muscles, needs to be stressed to just get it to work well. And any exercise that builds muscle builds bone, because the muscles pull on bones. So it's important to do some kind of exercise for upper body, for your spine, arms, and also for your lower body, which is what we usually think of. You'll hear ridiculous statements like, oh, swimming's no good for building bones because your body's supported by the water. If you are building upper body muscle swimming, you are building bone. So know that any exercise that builds muscle builds bone. And that's what we want. It's like muscle, bones are use it or lose it. So it's really important as we age to have some kind of exercise program. It's not optional to healthy aging. You absolutely have to do some kind of exercise. Bone is not just mineral. If it were just calcium, magnesium, think of a stick of chalk. That's 100% calcium. Very brittle. So just having high bone mineral density doesn't protect you from fractures. You need flexibility in those bones. And what makes your bones flexible is your body lays down, this is an analogy, like a collagen web. And collagen is flexible, and then your body puts those minerals into that web so your bones have flexibility. Even a stick of chalk has strength this way, just not this way. The same with our bones. If your bones are very, very dense, they're still going to snap if you put pressure on them, bending sideways rather than putting pressure on the top going down. Let's talk about what causes weak bones. Well, we want our bones to have good mineral content and good collagen content. What really is hardest on bones is acidity. Our bodies are made to be alkaline. If they're acid, if our blood acidity changes just a little toward the acid side, it would kill us. Our brains can't take acid environment. So our bodies are very smart. They pull minerals out of our bones into our blood to buffer the acidity. Bodies are really smart. You know, osteoporosis or losing minerals from your bones isn't an accident. It's keeping you alive. What we want is to stay as relatively alkaline. What causes acidity? Sugar, cigarette smoking, lack of sunshine, stress, and what people don't realize is all prescription drugs make your body more acid. And prescription drugs very often interfere with your balance and your proprioception, how you use your body. So it's important to realize that when your doctor is prescribing all these drugs for different things. High protein diets also not very good for bones. Soft drinks, probably the worst, absolutely worst thing you can do to your body. They're incredibly acid. All carbonated drinks are acid. Carbon dioxide in water produces carbonic acid. So even if you're drinking carbonated water, that's not really good for your bones or for your body. The other thing about soft drinks have about, one 12-ounce can has about 9 teaspoons of sugar. Has so much sugar that you couldn't drink it. I mean, you would vomit it up. It's so sweet. So what do the soft drink manufacturers, colas I'm talking about especially, do? They add phosphoric acid to make it tart and not so ridiculously sweet. So there you have phosphoric acid, sugar, carbonic acid, all really, really bad for your body. Dairy. Why is dairy not good? We've been told, everybody needs milk. Well, if you want to keep your body alkaline, you don't want dairy because what is dairy? Protein. Protein is amino acid, lactic acid in dairy. If you've had a marble countertop and spilled milk on it, the milk will eat right into the marble. It's very acid. So dairy products are not good for your body, and I'll go into some rather scary details about dairy a little later on. But there's an exception to this, and that is sour milk products, goat milk or sheep milk products, and yogurt are all okay. Oh, sedentary lifestyle. One of the things that we in the West have is a lot of stress. Stress acidifies your body very much. So it's important to do whatever you can. Stress relief, exercises, meditation, all very important for keeping our bodies alkaline.
You didn't say things like citrus fruit. Isn't that high acid or not?
Very interesting. If you take a lime, an orange, a lemon, eat it. It's acid in your stomach, which you want to be able to absorb minerals. But when it's metabolized, it makes a total switch and it alkalizes your blood.
Is that right?
But now there's an exception, and that is if you get something like real lemon, the plastic squeezy bottle of, doesn't do it. Once it's been processed, it doesn't make that metabolic shift. But that was a very good question. Yeah, I was amazed when I first learned that. Yeah. The only exception to fresh fruits making that change are plums and prunes. They don't make that switch. And I don't know why, but they don't. Let's look at the other, I mentioned that all prescription drugs acidify your body, including bisphosphonates, which are the drugs that are prescribed for osteoporosis. Bisphosphonates are really bad actors because they've been found, what they do, I said your bones have these osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So all that bisphosphonates do, the drugs that strengthen your bones, is stop those osteoclasts, kills the osteoclasts, so they're not there to take out the old brittle bone anymore. So you're accumulating old brittle bone, but not really building any new strong bone. So they are very bad. Another prescription drug that's very bad, and non-prescription too, are the antacid drugs. The little pink pills, you have gastric reflux, so you take an antacid. Well, if you're taking an antacid, you're not able to absorb the nutrients from the food you're eating because you need acid in your stomach to absorb those minerals and to break down the food so you can absorb nutrients. On top of that, if you're taking them, antacids for gastric reflux or acid reflux problems, it's a very interesting process. We have a little valve right here that's designed to keep the acid in our stomachs. That little valve is triggered by acid. As we get older, our stomachs produce less acid. And if there's not enough acid, that little valve just relaxes and lets acid up. So the problem isn't too much acid, it's actually too little. And you can very often, almost 100% of the time, solve acid problems by taking hydrochloric acid pills rather than the pink pills that wipe the acid out. The other problem with the antacids is, well, they stop the acid in your stomach. That acid kills germs. And so people who are on acid blockers are much more likely to have pneumonia and other diseases that the acid would normally kill. So it's really not a good thing to do either for your bones or for your body in general. There's a much easier way to solve acid problems, and that's by putting the acid back that's supposed to be there.
What about baking soda?
I have mixed feelings about baking soda. For alkalizing your body, it's great. Works really well. I would say don't take it with meals because it also alkalizes the acid in your stomach. So if you're going to do baking soda, do it in between meals. But it is an excellent way to alkalize your body. Works really well. I don't do it because I want to make sure my body's absorbing the minerals and nutrients in the food I eat. So if you're having an acid reflux or acid problem, it's because as we get older, we just don't have enough stomach acid, or we're eating really bad food. Betaine HCl, betaine hydrochloric acid, and it's available in health food stores. It's pretty common. The other problem with doing the antacids is we all have really toxic bacteria in our guts. It's C. diff is the shorter name for it, and it can kill you. It's a really dangerous bacteria. The acid in your stomach keeps that under control. If you're putting down the acid and removing the acid, then it's not uncommon to have a C. diff overgrowth, which, like I say, is really an awful infection. Now I'm going to go on to what causes fractures. I believed from my research in the past that people would step off a curb, their hip would break and they'd fall. Absolutely untrue. Latest research shows that 85% of the fractures are caused by falls, not falls caused by fractures. So we've been fed a bill of goods in that way. So if you want to prevent falls, what you want is to improve your balance, make sure your sight and hearing are good, and that you have muscle strength, that you're fit. Frailty is what causes falls and broken bones. And I have a statistic that tickled me. That's a third of everyone over 65 has a bad fall about once a year. I've had 2 this year, really bad falls. So it's just not my sight or my balance. It's just that I hit one of those cement things on the street and I was scurrying to get around someone and just wasn't paying attention to what was going on. So that's falls like hip fractures. Spinal fractures, they used to say, oh, they're spontaneous. Your spine's so fragile, it just breaks. Not true. Almost all of the vertebral fractures are caused by improper lifting, and that's bending over and you can pick up like a piece of paper and fracture your spine because you're not supposed to lift like that. All of your lifting should be from your knees. One of the easiest ways to tell if you're in danger of fracturing something is if you can't get up out of a chair without using your arms, then you are at risk for fracture. And again, that goes to why you need to be in good physical condition and exercise as you get older. It isn't optional. Osteoporosis drugs. This is pretty scary. The bisphosphonates increase your risk of hip fractures. These are the drugs that are supposed to protect you from breaking bones. They increase the risk of hip fractures. They increase the risk of, it's called osteonecrosis, which means your bones die, like jawbone especially. Oh, that's something interesting. Your dentist is probably the first person who would know if you're losing bone density, because your jawbone is the most porous bone in your body. And if you're diagnosed with receding gums, it's not your gums that are receding, it's the bone under the gums. So very often your dentist will say, you know, you've got a problem, you should have your bones checked or do something about your bones. You are 125% more likely to suffer a fracture if you've been put on bisphosphonates. Fosamax are one of the drugs for osteoporosis, which, again, this makes no sense at all. Why put someone on a drug that's going to increase their fracture risk when it's supposed to do just the opposite? What strengthens bones? Okay, well, an alkalizing diet, a healthy lifestyle, weight-bearing exercise, but also exercises that improve balance, like Tai Chi. There's a study showed that if you do Tai Chi, the very slow oriental exercises, you're 30% less likely to fall. So that is a really big endorsement for Tai Chi. Balancing hormones is also important. Most of us start losing bone density at an increased rate at menopause. But like I said, one of the things that's really important is to make sure that the hormones, first, that you have a hormone panel done, and second, that if you need to supplement hormones, you use bioidentical hormones, not the synthetic, something that your body already recognizes. And I'm 75. I've been using natural progesterone cream since I was about 55. And I went off for a while. I had a hormone panel done. Salute. And my doctor said, go back on the progesterone, which I have. Hydration is really important for strengthening bones too, especially for your spine. The spacers between your spine require a lot of water to keep them healthy. So that's a very important thing. Something I've been told, it's not in my talk, but that if you want to absorb water better, put just a pinch of the pink salt or sea salt under your tongue before you drink the water. I use tap water here. I put it in a pitcher. I put a little iodine in it because we all tend to be short on iodine, and a pinch of salt in it. Let it sit overnight so the chlorine evaporates. All right, here's a myth. High bone density is good. Well, I thought that was true until I started reading the more recent research. High bone density increases your risk of fracture, and for women, cancer and heart disease. Remember back when everybody was told we have to take large doses of calcium? That was really bad because We have 4 major electrolytes in our blood: calcium, potassium, magnesium, and sodium. You would no more think of taking a big glob of salt. You know it would throw things off. Why would you take a big glob of calcium? Your body doesn't just use calcium for making bones. That's what this is about. You need all of these nutrients to build bone, not just calcium. You take a big dose of calcium, your body cannot put it into bones. It can't let it mess your electrolytes up. That would kill you. So what does it do? It puts it in soft tissue, in your brain, breast tissue, arteries, any place it can, skin, get calcium deposits, to get it out of your blood. That was really, really bad advice. High bone density. Okay, yeah, we've got really high bone density. Okay, heart disease and cancer are the 2 big killers of women. You have a 200 to 300% increase in risk of breast cancer if you have high bone density. You have a 24 to 86% increased risk of heart disease if you have high bone density. I didn't know this. I was encouraging everyone I screened to increase your bone density. And again, osteopenia is a non-disease. It was never meant to be a disease. It was just a definition of a group of people. 63% of all the fractures are in people with high bone density. So much for the DEXA scan, T-score, telling you what your risk is. Doesn't work. A couple other myths. Osteoporosis, or losing bone density, isn't just a problem women have. Men have it too. Men start out with about twice as dense bones as women. So for you to lose 10% of your bone density isn't as dangerous, or isn't as much of a problem as it is for us. But now I'm really suspicious of even those statistics about men being half as at risk of osteoporosis, because I don't really know what the risk for osteoporosis is anymore, since I've found out that it's an artificially defined disease. Bodies need about 17 different nutrients to build bone. There are a number of good bone building supplements, but these are all good supplements. You can order them online. I bring mine back from the US. I'm going to talk a little bit about dairy because, like I said, we've been told that dairy is good for bones. In fact, it is not good for our health in general. There was a 2014 study of 100,000 men and women. And what this showed is that women who drink milk have increased death rates compared to those who don't. It increases heart disease, it increases cancer risk, and it increases fractures.
So you're talking about cow milk?
Cow milk,
Not goat's milk.
not goat milk, yes. And not yogurt and not sour milk. 3 glasses of milk a day doubles a woman's risk of death, early death, and increases the risk of fractures by twice. Men have an increased risk of early death drinking 3 glasses of milk, but you don't have the increased risk of fractures, probably because your bones are starting out denser than ours do. Countries with the lowest dairy consumption have the lowest osteoporosis rates. You know, I say yogurt is good, but you see here these gallon or jugs of this pink sugar-filled, it's just junk food. So if you're going to eat yogurt, cow yogurt, make sure it has the live bacteria in it and that it doesn't have sugar and a lot of fillers. Salt. Here's another myth. Salt's bad for you. Salt, raises your blood pressure. It's terrible. Well, salt is absolutely necessary for bone building. Not talking about table salt. The table salt here is especially bad because not only is it ultra processed, it's also fluoridated, which affects our thyroid, which is why I add a little bit of iodine to my drinking water. So the low salt intake gives you like a 4 times increased risk of fracture. So all these people whose doctors are saying, don't do salt, your blood pressure is a little bit high, are really doing their patients a disservice, because sodium is one of the 4 electrolytes in our body. Yeah, stay away from the table salt, but don't stay away from the pink salt or the natural sea salt. Sun exposure, another thing we've been told, stay away from the sun. It's really bad, you get skin cancer. Well, a big study was done in Spain, and they found that sun seekers, people who actually go and lie in the sun, had 1/11 the risk of fractures compared to people who stayed out of the sun. Vitamin D is essential for good bones. And yeah, don't go out and sit in the sun all day, but 20 to 30 minutes a day, as much skin as you can expose. I try to do it here like at 7 in the morning, 7:30, if there's any sun at all. But it's very important. And most of us should be taking vitamin D supplements. I recommend D2K3 supplement that has both, because we tend to be really low in vitamin K also, and that's another really important nutrient for our bones. Yeah, K2. High protein food risks. Somebody asked me in my last talk, what's high protein? What do you consider a high protein diet? And I did a little research, and for a 150-pound person, 55 grams of protein is about right. Well, 55 grams, that doesn't mean anything to me. A 4-ounce patty of hamburger has about 33 grams of protein. 5 eggs have about 31 grams of protein, just to give you an idea. For every kilogram of weight, you multiply your weight in kilograms times 0.08, and that'll tell you how much protein you should get. Now, if you're really active, you want to get a little more. If you're very sedentary, you want to get a little less. Protein is essential for muscle building. Another interesting thing, if you spread your protein out over the day, your body builds muscle better than if you have just a big steak in the evening. Obviously, smoking is really bad for bones. It's bad for everything. The other thing that's really bad, though, is processed foods. And the reason is, first of all, there are a lot of chemicals added that acidify your body. They're low in nutrients, high in calories. If you can stay away from processed foods, here it's easier than it is in the US, because there just aren't, you pay a premium for canned foods and frozen foods here, and the vegetables and fruits are so wonderful and so inexpensive. Here's an interesting fact. I said you have to use your bones, stress them for them to stay strong. If you have your arm in a cast for 6 weeks, you lose 50% of the bone density in that arm, which is why people have to do so much exercise once they get the cast off. So there's no getting around it. We have to be active. Another thing that alkalizes our body, deep breathing. That's a really easy way to alkalize your body. I read somewhere recently that if you inhale, say 3, count of 3, and exhale the count of 5, that relaxes you and also clears out the carbon dioxide. Remember carbon dioxide in water? Carbonic acid. One thing that amazed me, I say sugar is not good for you. one of the worst things I keep reading for you. But I'm not a sugar person. I'm more a salt person. Well, I just read that 13 potato chips have, I should put my glasses on, 3.5 teaspoons of salt, of sugar. It's your body converts the simple carbohydrates to sugar. So I'm pretty sure that means taco chips and Chief-Lays also. One of the best exercise pieces of equipment you can get, and I wish I had one, is a rebounder, because it exercises your entire body and it gets your lymphatic system circulating. So it's good for virtually everything. Okay, if you look at the front page of the handout, it lists all of the nutrients that are necessary for building bone. And if you look down the list, it's pretty clear that dark green leafy vegetables are the very best. Sunlight, very important. Citrus fruits, again. Vitamin C builds collagen, that nice mesh that keeps your bones flexible. Is there anything unusual here? No, they're pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go over what increases bone loss. By the way, fluoride is a problem, and the salt here is fluoridated. It's a problem because it affects our thyroid, which affects our bones. Weight-bearing exercise, pulling, pushing, lifting, or chi machine maybe. Recommended reading. There are some really good books out there if you want to know how to build bone. One of the best I found was Better Bones, Better Bodies by Susan Brown. If you're interested in, well, let's see, the top one, your bones, how you can prevent osteoporosis, have strong bones. Jonathan Wright is one of the alternative doctors in Seattle, Washington area. So he's quite good. Bone building supplements. Like I said, I have not been able to find any really good ones here because you really need a full spectrum bone building supplement, not just calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, 3 or 4 ingredients. If you have someone going to the States who can bring something back for you, I take...
Which one would you say?
Well, I take Triboron Plus just because it's easy to find. It doesn't have silicone, so I take a separate silica supplement. And I'm a big believer in supplementation. Some people are, some people aren't. I do a lot of listening to programs on the internet about health and alternative healing. Some alternative healers are just, you don't need supplements. I'm sorry, I don't eat enough to get as much of the nutrients as I need, so I take supplements. I think it's really hard, especially for women, to consume enough food to get everything we need. So I think a good multiple vitamin is not a one a day. You cannot put enough nutrients in one pill to really be any good. So at least a 2 a day, morning and night. That's not too hard. Vitamin C, vitamin D. I think it's a good idea to have a vitamin D blood test to see what your vitamin D is. Most of us are going to need vitamin D. Vitamin C, D, E, another really important one, vitamin E. I take a full spectrum B vitamin also, yes. I think that's important. So I'm taking a bone building, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, and a B. Did I say B? So I'm taking quite a few supplements. People say, oh, you're wasting your money. Well, I'm 75. I don't think I'm wasting my money. I feel pretty healthy. And one of the things I didn't talk about is your family history as far as bone density. I come from a family, no one in my family has ever broken a bone. We're good, solid German stock. And like I said, I've taken 2 really big falls and not fallen. If you're Scandinavian background, blonde, light complected, much more likely to have a problem with bones than if you're short, stocky, and darker skinned. But genetics isn't a death sentence. Now they know that genes are just little switches, and if you do things that don't turn that switch on, like eat a healthy diet, exercise, do stress relief, so forth, those genes are never turned on and you don't have to worry about your bones. Just the opposite, if you eat a horrible diet, are sedentary, under a lot of stress, then yeah, those little switches are going to turn on and you're going to have to worry about genetic problems. Okay, caffeine, interesting. Caffeine has a good side and a bad side. The good side is it has a lot of health benefits. The bad side is it's very acid. But if you are drinking a cup or 2 of coffee a day, you're not going to have a problem. And interestingly, decaf is no better or worse than caffeinated. There's something in coffee that is both a laxative and a diuretic. And they don't know what it is, but it's the same in caffeinated or decaffeinated coffee. I have a story about that. I had a friend in Seattle, a couple years older than I, but quite wealthy. He had a team of 5 doctors, private doctors. He called me one day and said that he'd had a DEXA scan. This is a man who skied, who played softball, was very physically active, fairly big guy, and his bone density test was a little low. So his doctors said, yeah, we want to put you on Fosamax. I said, Jim, now I knew this guy quite well. I knew he doesn't eat vegetables at all. I mean, he was just from Atlanta, Georgia, and just didn't do vegetables. I said, Jim, how much coffee are you drinking? He said, oh, I drink a pot or 2 a day at work. He didn't have to go on Fosamax. He just had to cut down his coffee consumption. And his bones would be fine. And now I know, even if his bones were a little bit low, the risk of him breaking anything was virtually nil. So, coffee, good and bad. Just don't drink tons of it. You were asking about the citrus fruit. Natural apple cider vinegar has the same effect. And in fact, instead of using baking soda, you can drink apple cider vinegar in water for acid reflux. If it's natural apple cider vinegar, it has the same metabolic shift that citrus fruits have, or most fruits have. So it's acid in your stomach, and when it's metabolized, it alkalizes your body, which is why apple cider vinegar in the morning is touted by so many people. So it is very good for you. The other thing that is interesting about acid in your tooth enamel, I said I take vitamin C. You really don't want to take chewable vitamin C because that will etch the enamel on your teeth. So if you're taking vitamin C, take it in a capsule or a pill form. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Thank you.